So this portion of our presentation, our second presentation, is titled Cultivating Student Engagement in STEM, Exploring Scientist, Advisor, Teacher, Mentor, and Student Team Relationships Towards Student Team Success in the Exploration of the Moon and Asteroids by Secondary Students, ExMASS program. In this second presentation, we will discuss the preliminary findings and provide some examples of emails that fit into various subcategories. Just as a quick aside, as educators, we were excited to see the level of student engagement throughout the program and through their sophisticated questions and discussions. And you'll see some examples of those throughout this presentation. We will finish with our next steps and future research goals, and then we will invite your questions. So as I said before, we have categorized the content of the email exchanges into two major themes. Discussion of the research, where advisors, mentors, and students were asking questions and discussing their projects. And the second theme, communication, which includes subcategories addressing how the scientist advisors interacted with their student teams. Within each theme, we will discuss selected subcategories and provide examples.
So very quickly, here's a list of the subcategories connected to the larger category, discussion of research. Following this slide, we will provide examples of the specific subcategories that you see here in bold text.
Discussion of research showcases conversations between scientists and students or teacher mentors representing their students. The first category, scientists provide resources, is defined as occurrences where scientists provided links to papers, tools, reference materials, images, either solicited or unsolicited by students. This particular slide is an example of two different conversations between scientists and student teams, in which scientists provide resources such as images, references, and posts related to, in this case, crater age dating.
The second subcategory, scientist advisors provide content and or clarification, speaks to a scientist providing help with interpreting academic content, facts, or definitions often found in high-level research papers or other sources gleaned by the student researchers. This slide shows examples of how a scientist explains reflexivity and directionality on lunar bodies. As a quick aside, none of the researchers on our team are lunar or planetary science experts. We found the academic content of the email exchanges to be fascinating and learned some cool information ourselves. Additionally, we were impressed by the secondary students. They were able to follow the conversation and engage with the scientists by asking relevant questions, requesting poignant resources, and embarking on unfamiliar data analyses in some cases.
The third subcategory, scientist advisors provide experimental design or scientific inquiry help, speaks to a scientist advising the research process. In K-12 science education settings, we refer to the research practices as including process skills, scientific investigation and reasoning skills, or simply science inquiry, or experimental design practices and protocols. This slide represents an example of this category, where a scientist suggests students come up with an NEA plan, a near-Earth asteroid plan.
Here's a list of subcategories connected to the second largest category called communication. Following the slide, we will provide examples of the subcategories that you see here in bold.
This subcategory, scientist advisors address team and/or students directly, refers to any direct conversation between students and their scientist advisor. This type of encounter occurred frequently and also included rapport-building statements. Rapport was created between scientists and teams as indicated by the slide. Here, the scientist took a picture related to her student team's school while driving in her city to the delight of her team. Additionally, scientists shared personal details in an attempt to connect with their team members. Such conversations humanized the scientists and made them accessible.
So in the last subcategory, we wanted to examine we want to examine are the email exchanges between scientist advisors and the teacher mentors. We have coined this the adult conversation, or the conversations that students weren't privy to. Because of the way the mentor advisor role was established, the mentor serves as the main point of contact between the team and the scientist advisor. However, about double the amount of email exchanges were between the scientist advisor and the mentor, excluding input from the students. For example, this exchange between the teacher, mentor, and scientist advisor. The advisor is describing an important research finding and their plan for explaining the implications with the students at the next meeting. My future research, and ultimately my dissertation, will focus on this scientist advisor teacher mentor relationship and how they work together to facilitate their student teams through this authentic inquiry project.
With phase 3 research consisting of 2021 ExMASS data from a single cohort of participants, phase 2 data consists of applications and survey data from as far back as 2014 through 2018. We refer to all the data as the ExMASS data cache, and all the data potentially allows for a longitudinal study about the impact of scientist advisors on high school students. Along with the emails we discussed earlier, we will analyze student and scientist responses to an adapted version of the Munich Evaluation of Mentoring questionnaire, and also an additional questionnaire that we've created ourselves. Responses on these additional instruments will allow us to analyze characteristics of the relationships occurring between ExMASS scientists, students, and their teachers. We believe that determining and disseminating the positive characteristics of the ExMASS relationships can increase their frequency and potentially help replicate the ExMASS program and scientist involvement with high school students.
We researchers were very pleasantly surprised and amazed by the level of understanding demonstrated by the high school students. As this slide illustrates, this is a high school student responding to a scientist email. So please take a moment to read the slide. I think you'll be amazed as well.
So I'm going to go ahead and switch the slide now.
So as I mentioned previously, my dissertation will focus on understanding how the advisor-mentor relationship influenced student research and participation in authentic science inquiry.
Here's a sample list of our references. And at this time, this concludes our second presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions. We are happy to share our thoughts or listen to your comments at this time. We just also want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be here. We really appreciate this opportunity to share. And quick shout out about the LPI program, and rather I should say ExMASS program. We've included Mr. Andy Shainer's information here on the slide in case any scientists would like to help out in future ExMASS cohorts.
So we do have a question in the chat from Jay. It says, these direct scientist mentor partnerships are obviously so powerful, but there are a relatively few number of scientists compared to the number of potential mentees. What can be done to expand or leverage, or instead to strategize and target these relationships where most are needed?
I can address that. One of the things that we have on our timeline is we are submitting a proposal to the NSFDR K-12. And what we hope to be able to do, if that proposal is funded, is to host a conference that we're calling a conversation, where we will include teachers, students, and scientists in the conversation, so they can learn more about what each other is doing, so that we can highlight what kinds of similar programs are in place. And so just everybody feels more comfortable with these connections. So we're hoping to get more scientists out of that conference. So that's one of the things we have planned.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those great talks.